How you doing, everybody? Tim from Ski Rex Media. A little jazzed right now for this introduction because I just finished my interview with Dan Egan, the great Dan Egan, extreme skiing pioneer, businessman, New Englander. Awesome guy. What a great interview. And because of part of that interview, we talk about his tour dates, we get a bonus episode for September 1st. Yes, I'm sure. Let's see. You haven't seen the episode yet because it has been recorded. I've been getting ahead of myself. You know that. I've already done recordings with John Hunt from Whaleback, Mike Rogie from Mountain Gazette, Tom Thrash, another Northeast skier who's been to just about every place in New England you can ski. Just about. I got ahead of myself. And even at the closing of the Mike Rogie episode, I said next week will be Dan Egan. That's still 3 weeks away. That Rogie's episode comes out. So for my friends listening or watching, whether you check out the video version or the audio only version, I have to go re-record that as well and get that done, which is fine. That won't be a problem because Dan Egan will not be the week after Mike Rogie. I'm not sure who will be actually at this time. So I should probably stop saying who's going to be next. In any case, for September 1st, you get a bonus episode. You get the Dan Egan episode. Earlier today, you had the Abe Maynard episode with the ski system, talking about the ski system, his ski-based training system. And if you haven't checked that out yet, do it, please. I appreciate it. Also, while you're checking out that episode, make sure you follow or subscribe depending on which platform you use. You're a subscriber on YouTube if you use the video version. You might be a follower or a subscriber depending on whether you listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe or follow, whichever word they use on their button. Make sure you also follow on social media. Pardon my little tongue-tiedness there. Like I said, I'm jazzed. I just talked to the legend of ski legends, Dan Egan. It's an awesome interview. I know you're going to enjoy it. So follow me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The website, you can subscribe, skirexpedia.com. You bet you can do that, but the website's going to change soon. I'm redesigning it, so your subscribe might not work. I'll have to work on that. You know, I'm still working on some of the technical aspects as well. You know what I mean? But subscribe everywhere you can. Rate it. You know, I've had a 5-star rating, at least one on Apple Podcasts. If you wouldn't mind rating the podcast, leaving a comment or two, and criticism too. Don't be a dick, but if you think I'm doing something not so good, tell me. How else am I going to learn? Right? Right. So now that all that's done, and SkiRexMediaMerchShop.com and Patreon.com, SkiRex Media as well. If you want to check out throwing a little cash and making SkiRex an even more paying job, SkiRex Media. In any case, fun stuff aside, all the shameless plugs aside, let's talk about today's interview. Today, I speak with Dan Egan, pioneering force in the extreme skiing movement. Been in so many Warren Miller films, produced his own films, is an athlete of many other sports, has a whole other life, and has lived in places other people wouldn't have lived. And it's all told in this book here, 30 Years in a White Haze by Dan Egan and also by Eric Wilbur. Shout out to him. Dan Egan, autobiographical, a textbook, a history book, an inspiring book. It's a great book, and we talk about it next. Dan and I, we get into it New England style, kind of. We're both New Englanders, so it works, right? Right. Check out the interview with Dan Egan here, and I will see you at the end for the closing, and we'll do some more shameless plugs and whatnot, so stick around for that. I'll see you when it's over. Joining me today on the Ski Rex Media Podcast, probably the biggest legend of legends I've had so far, not to oversell the man, Mr. Dan Egan. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How are we doing, Tim? What's happening?
Excellent, man. You know what? I have to admit openly right now in front of everybody that if just bear with the fanboy and the nervousness stuff. Like I said, probably the biggest legend of the legends that I've talked to yet. And let's be honest, I haven't met a pro in person since the 90s. To be honest, that last person was Kelly Clark from Mount Snow. So there you go. Yeah. Today, I think we're just going to start in talking about the book, 30 Years in a White Haze, Dan Egan, Eric Wilbur. Awesome, dude. I enjoyed every minute of it. It's so much more than an autobiography. It's a history book. It's a personal book. I mean, it wouldn't take much to have this written as a Hollywood script. Like, it wouldn't take much change. How much of that was intentional?
Well, I had always wanted to tell the deeper story than just a bunch of ski bum stories. And,
Sure.
the root of things are important to me, where things come
Yeah.
from. And tracing the extreme skiing roots back to the hot dogging roots
Yeah.
is something I've always seen and I've always believed in. So it was more than that. Then the other aspects, is family.
Totally.
I'm from a really big family, and the way my parents raised 7 kids, they've fostered confidence and independence. So I wanted to weave all that together because there's not a lot of reason why 2 kids from, Boston grow up to ski around the world. So, I wanted to kind of bring that to light.
Yeah. And it was very interesting. Your family takes up a good chunk of the story. Like, again, it's not, I mean, it is autobiographical in a way, but it's really, there's so many people in it. It's not just one story. There's your brother John, whom everybody knows, who pays attention to the sport, and then there's everybody else. Like, I couldn't even try without better notes listing every member of your family that got mentioned, dude. How did they take it? Like, have your brothers and sisters, nieces, everybody, have they read it or talked about it at all?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And, just all the people that, we never do anything alone in life. And,
Sure.
That everything sort of unfolds, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And all of those characters played a role in our careers. Yeah, my family, there's been different nieces and nephews have read the book. My niece over in Japan, who lives there full time, was excited to get it, and she read it, and my siblings, of course. So it's just I think it's so super interesting. It's also hits close to home. It's a very
Sure.
personal book, so I think there's a lot of emotion with it, and I think that deepens over time and sort of reveals itself in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can definitely feel it. Like, this is a book that has a lot of feeling to it. I feel, oddly enough to say it that way, but it is there's a lot of heart in the book. You talk about other emotions like fear later on, and we'll come back to that. Now, having written it and asking if your family has read it, I know you have had to read it, but you wrote it, and Eric Wilbur wrote it, so you guys had to read it, reread it, editors, then rewrite, reread, whatever the process may be. Everybody's process is a little different. Have you read the final product? And what'd you think of it in the end?
Well, Eric Wilbur is amazing. He's really the magic sauce, and I like to tell people I was born to ski, not spell. So we found very few errors in the final product. Yeah, I've read the final product. I'm not. I've read it obviously before it went to print, but then
Sure.
after it came back, and the first thing people notice about the book is they're like, 400 pages. And people will joke like, you didn't have much to say, and stuff like that. But then, almost weekly and sometimes daily, I get comments like, dude, I sat down and read your book in 2 days. Like, I haven't read
Yeah.
a book in 30 years, and so the reaction is, it's a quick read, and it's a compact read.
Yes.
And, for me, it's just like when I watch the old Warren Miller films, I recall everything. I recall being on the volcanoes in Chile and in Turkey. I recall the people that were around us and the places we were. So when I read the final product, I was like, oh, I forgot this story and I wanted to tell this story. And Eric, every time we're doing a book signing, he'll go, 400 pages, Dan. 400
That's so awesome. So that's good. So, well, a couple things on that. Number one, that is one of the things I noticed is it's a big book. And I, like your example, haven't been reading many books. I find myself reading more short articles, things like this. One of one of the things that suck about the internet is now everything's gotten smaller, and I thought I could still read quickly. And I started this, and I felt like I was reading it slowly. I felt like I was almost disrespecting it. But after a while, you get into some of it, and all of a sudden, it's done. You're like, wait, no, there's gotta be another story, one more story, whether it's a ski story, a sailing story, a media story, a family story, a Boston story. You want more. You definitely want more. And you brought up your co-author, Eric Wilbur, who I think in his acknowledgments at the end and his thank yous, man, I think one of the things he said, I don't remember the exact quote offhand, but he was talking about his wife and had a conversation with his wife. He said, I had to write this. So I see, like you said, he did a great job. You said he was a big part of it. You can see it because he appeared excited. Was he as excited as he said he was?
Yeah, it was really interesting project. I started writing 30 Years in a White Haze probably 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I started writing it on the day that Warren Miller Entertainment took all of my territories in-house.
Okay.
They had a stuffed shirt from New York call Dan Egan to tell him they were taking my 21 shows in-house. And, and I just thought, this guy doesn't even know who he's calling, and I thought, they'd long since done away with Warren and so many of my friends. There was only a few of us left standing at the company that knew Warren, had worked with Warren. So I said to myself, what would Warren do?
Yeah.
I thought Warren would write a book. That's exactly what he would do. Wine, Women, and Warren, and all lurching from one disaster to another. And so I started writing White Haze. And in 2016, Eric Wilbur approached me about writing a book. And I said, oh, no, man, I'm doing it. And about a year later, I called him back. I said, no, I could use some help. And
true.
That beautiful thing is what he did, was able to bring the whole arc together.
Awesome. That's very awesome. Like I said, I enjoyed it. As a New Englander myself, one of the things I took away from it immediately reading it is it's names and places that I know I have visited. Not all of them, or not even all of them to ski. Like some of these mountains I've been to hike or some other event, whatever it may be. But, part of the cast of characters of the Deloriers from right up the road here at Bolton, you and your brother, those two guys, probably the two sets of brothers, the four biggest guys that come out of New England. It feels like a New Englander's book. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Would you agree? Like, it felt like you were trying to keep it New England. It's kind of a dumb question, but maybe you follow it. Yeah,
well, I'm a New Englander, and I've never wanted to live full-time in the West. I've always come home to New England after every ski season. Sure. And, you see the references in there to the Boston Red Sox. And, at opening day, wherever I was opening day, I'm like, oh, well, I've got to get back. And, I'm a New Englander. And I what I love about New England and New Englanders is that we're not afraid to put our chin to the wind.
Sure.
We're bold and we're rugged. And most, I've sat on chairlifts on sunny days in New England, rainy days in New England, snowy days in New England, and New Englanders ski. They're not complaining about the weather, and they almost get bond. That bond gets tighter the harder the weather is. And that's what I love about it. You go up to Bolton Valley. You got a bunch of people who are not afraid to ski. In all conditions. They're not there because it's a perfect day. They're there because they love to ski. And that is, to me, at the core, what a New Englander is.
Absolutely. And I agree, man. Rain, sleet, snow, as long as you don't slide off the road. And even then, I've heard of people who ditched their car and walked up. I was 20 feet from the parking lot. I'll get it at the end of the day. It's not going anywhere. Right. I'm like, right on, dude. And that's great. Like I said, I love New England. You have so many New England stories here. And stuff that we don't know, like your tenure and time at Tenny Mountain over there. I had no idea that happened. I was out of the state. I was actually living in New Jersey at that time. I wasn't, I was coming up to go to Mount Snow in Stratton because I still had friends who worked there from high school, so at that time I wasn't exploring, but like you said, you're a New Englander and you made that a New England mountain. How was that? Would you consider doing that again? Just, I know it's kind of slightly a left curve here or whatever,
Well,
but would you do it again?
Being a general manager of a ski resort, I loved it because it was chaos. I
Sure.
thrive on chaos. And, running a ski resort is 24/7 game on. You're making snow, you're grooming snow, you're opening lifts, you've got to sell tickets. It's nonstop. And that really fed into my personality. I really loved it.
Sure.
So, I've taken a couple other runs at it. One of the stories we didn't put in the book was I was a finalist to run Rosa Couture in Sochi during the Olympics.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, I love the way ski areas operate, and it's a lot of fun.
Ski area operation, I liked being in it myself. I was back at Mount Snow with the American Skiing Company, and I've heard tell that Les Autens out there in northern New Hampshire somewhere doing something. I don't know what he's doing, but I've heard. And it'd be great to see him come back out again. That'd be awesome. I love the American Skiing Company, but it is a great industry that can be, like you said, full of chaos, man. And interestingly enough, and I'm trying not to get too deep, too specific into the stories because I don't want people to have it ruined for them. Because like I said, it reads like an adventure novel in some ways and a history book in others, and I don't want to ruin any of that. But I remember in the Tenny Mountain story, I think you said something like, I can't quote it, but it was like people were afraid to see you coming. And I've had bosses like that. And I was like, dude, I don't have a problem with the guy. What's your issue? Like, why are you scared, man? And as in retail management, I was that guy for a little while. People like, Tim's coming, everybody duck. It's like, dude, I'm nice. You seem like a nice guy to me. I don't get it. How was that for you taking on? I mean, you explain it in the book, but why not say it
now? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of ski areas that are run like this anymore where, all the decisions come down to one person. I've always said that ski areas should not be a committee, my good friend Jimmy Ackerson, who's run Portillo, he's run Valley Nevado, he's down there in further south now, Caraca. Wow. When you go to a Jimmy Ackerson resort, what you hear around the resort is Jimmy said.
Okay.
Jimmy said. And if you know Jimmy and you're close to Jimmy and you say Jimmy said, they open the lift for you. That sort of credibility, that's how Tenny was. We had my good friend Arturo Lyon was the ski school director from South America, so a very elegant guy. We had Rich Saturday, who had run ski areas, and Rich was, the man behind the curtain keeping the lifts running. And, I kind of saw my job as making sure people showed up and did what they said they were going to do. And, you at ski areas, sometimes they're not doing it. It was also a very sort of turmoil time in my life. So it was a good place for me to kind of auger in and take some frustrations out.
Nice. Yeah. And again, I get it. You're right. There's goofing off at these hills, which I didn't know until I started. I started working at a ski hill at 15, and I was like, there's a whole other world here. But speaking of that, before we get too far into a lot of stories, but you just mentioned how it was a pretty rough time in your life at that point. This book is super honest, like honest to a point where, like you talk about during your extreme days, the rock star party lifestyle, drugs, booze, whatever. You talk about, your past relationships, all this other stuff. The Mount Elbrus story, very, very honest. Like there's cuss words in those stories. Not that I mind. I don't care. I use them. But, the point is that you were very honest. Obviously, then that was your point to be that honest. But how did you feel about being that honest? Like embarrassed, out of comfort zone, didn't care. It's just honesty to you. How'd you feel about all that?
Oh, it was a hard process. It was an emotional process for me. Eric and I would write these chapters and we'd bounce them back and forth between each other. And he could kind of gauge how much time I was taking with the chapter by how it was affecting me.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, some of the things I hadn't dealt with I hadn't really looked at in years, decades.
Sure.
And so, but I wanted all of it in the book because just as so many people helped our career, so many people are involved, and they needed to have their own voice in the book. So in order to do that, I had to be authentic. I had to lay it out there so their voice could be equally as important. And so it was a little, I was on the edge of uncomfortable for sure.
Sure.
Living like a rock star in your 20s, and traveling around the world, that sounds like an amazing thing. But of course, it's difficult. I used to live on the road for 10 months a year for almost 10 years.
Sure.
And that included living in vans, living in hotel rooms, crashing on people's couches, and 2 months, crashing at my mom's attic. So, all of that stuff sort of is a little unsettling. And when I moved to New Hampshire, one of the things I recognized was I was missing community.
Sure.
I had a worldwide community, but when the person behind the post office knew my name, I was like, wow, that's freaky. So yeah, I wanted the book to have a rawness to it, and I think we accomplished that.
I absolutely agree. Knowing who you are since I was early teens, that's when I really started getting into it. Watching the Warren Miller films, and that was in the early 90s. So watching the films, learning the names, some names I've forgotten. There were names in your book I had to look up. I was like, wait, who was that? Like, I don't remember. And that's just me getting older. But, it was so honest about, like I said, like the party life, what it could be, what it is, what it leads to. And it's something some people will need to hear, I think. Some people will just like to hear it. And it's a side that you don't expect. Like, you expect it from Hollywood movie stars. You expect it from rock stars. But here are these guys, these ski bums. These guys were getting paid to ski. What could their life possibly be? Well, there it is. There you go. Like, that's what it was. It's an amazing story. Also, it gets to the point of honesty. And again, trying not to get too deep into the stories. I don't want to ruin it. But your trip to the Middle East and Lebanon, that's very honest to say, I snuck in. like, isn't that jailable? Is there a statute of limitations on that? Is it? Well, it was obviously worth the risk.
It was illegal at the time for an American to go. There were still hostages when I snuck into Lebanon,
Totally.
Beirut. But the trip was endorsed by the United Nations. Was sponsored by the American Arab League and Middle Eastern Airlines. But yeah, I couldn't let them stamp my passport.
Yep.
And so it was a little nerve-wracking. And we were joking at the time because I was running around DC trying to get approval and safety and all this sort of stuff, that somewhere the CIA is going, what, Warren Miller, who's that, what, and
awesome.
The American Arab League had arranged for my passport not to be stamped.
Yep.
And so when I get on that plane, there's no direct flights to Beirut. There weren't at the time from the US.
Sure.
So I had to go to London, and they told me, go to the Damascus gate, tell me you're going to Damascus, and wink twice, and they'll put you on the Beirut flight. And this stuff, you can't make it up. And so that happened. But once I was on that flight, people told me, like, you should get off this flight.
Yeah.
The only Americans on that flight were American women who had married Lebanese. They're like, you're crazy. I wouldn't let my brother come on this flight. Nobody. And so when they welcomed me at the airport in a cage, you walk into that's immigration.
Sure.
Says, Mr. Egan, nice to see you. And he puts a piece of paper on this and he stamps it. So there's more to that story, but people forget about the first World Trade Center bombing in February of 1993. And
totally.
Those names are on the 9/11 memorial, which is really important that they are, of course, but that
absolutely,
that changed a lot. And very few people wanted to go on my piste ski after that.
I can imagine. Little worried. Country was a little wild then. Even I remember that. I was 14 at the time, and I was like a little. I still remember it was a little strange. But that's. I think it's hard to pick a favorite story out of this, especially for me. Like I dig on the history part of it too. I'll take a history lesson any day of the week. But I think that one is up there because I'm sitting there with the book in hand, reading it like it's going to end. Well, we didn't get to go. And then it's like, all right, well, now they're not going to get to go. Well, now he's not like, holy shit, he's there, dude. What the holy smokes. Awesome. Great. But that's part of it. And again, that's part of that, not only that honesty, but that lifestyle that you led. One of the things, another trip of yours, the Berlin Wall trip. Now that one I did remember. I remember the photos. Obviously I didn't know the story, but I remember the photos. And that felt like you were telling that story as business as usual. But business as usual for you started, I can't remember where it started, but then it was like an impromptu road trip to Berlin, which at that time was a little different than going there now. And then right after that, you're heading to Zermatt for a pro photo shoot. Like business as usual is like left, right, straight. Like that was nuts.
Well, it was nuts. We were in Val d'Isere, and we were living in a 1-bedroom flat up the valley. With Tom Day, Lizzie Day, and Danny Day at the time was 3 years old. John and I and a bunch of other ski bums all piled into this thing, and we couldn't afford to stay as the British school holidays were coming. They were going to kick us out.
Sure.
So we knew we had to go somewhere. So it's a great story how we ended up borrowing, test driving Dennis's van that had no papers, no insurance, no license plate, and 6 nationalities and a baby in it. And let me tell you what, Berlin's not close to Val d'Isere, by the way.
No.
So, what's super, to put all that into perspective, the Cold War, if you're a Cold War kid, you grew up with bomb shelters, hiding underneath the desk, doing, practicing, so you're going to save yourself from nuclear war under the desk, whatever. So I was fascinated with the idea that the block was coming down, the Iron Curtain, because that was just something you couldn't imagine. And I tell people today, that's like me telling a kid today, YouTube's not going to be on. YouTube's going to go away.
Sure.
No, never. And that's how it was with the Iron Curtain. We had no idea that the Iron Curtain would ever come down. So, from 89 really through 94, we ventured into that land as much as we could. It was fascinating. And of course, being Boston, we were okay with like greasing people, paying to get in, that was something you did at nightclubs. That was something you did. So, flipping an East German guard, a couple of Deutschmarks made total sense to me. I just didn't know he was going to call his buddies and they were going to pull us over every 10 miles for the same thing.
Yeah. That's just a great story all around. Just a great story and a once in a lifetime story too. Like the wall was up and then it was down and you got to see the transition. Basically, nobody's going to see that again. Not any of us, not you, not me, not people behind me. What a great world you live in. And again, to that business as usual ideal, something you said in the book about the quote, I can't remember, but it was about following CNN, where they were going, you were going, nobody else was doing that.
Yeah.
You were practically you were a current events teacher almost in a way, but you did it through how cool is the hill he's hitting.
Right. Yeah. That was something with Warren, because Warren, I understood that attaching ourselves to something bigger than us was the way to go. And so, connecting with Warren Miller Films, and that was bigger than us. But then getting to know Warren and understanding his thing was like, what's bigger than him?
Sure.
And that was world events. So when I told him, hey, Warren, I want to go wherever CNN is, I mean, he just was like, we're doing it. There's no question. Like, where you going? Where you going next? And that sort of idea. So, and the fact that, even today, it's so relevant when you think about Afghanistan and all this sort of stuff. Like
Totally.
what we did with the movies is we humanized the place. There were
Yeah.
people living in these mountains. They were friendly. They wanted to meet Americans. They didn't hate Americans. They were curious about us. We were curious about them. And one thing I tell people now is, you couldn't do what we did because the world did not become safer, which is so bizarre. You couldn't travel to ski with the Kurds on the border of Turkey anymore. It's changed a lot, and that's really odd. That it didn't become a safer place. And then I always get a kick, everybody wants to think they're the first. I mean, of course, we weren't the first to ski in some of these countries. They're already skiing there. But
Sure.
now when I see the, sort of the new school film saying, hey, we're the first to Romania or something, I want to send a return of the shred-eye and update them,
Yeah, no, you weren't, kid. Hate to tell you. No disrespect to the young kids, though. They're doing their thing, but that's actually a good, nice little segue to another part of the book I enjoyed. Again, the history. I really enjoyed the history, and you talked about the extreme movement, how it not only how it came to be in the U.S., but the difference between the U.S. and the Europeans. And then what it has become. In particular, I think you talked about the old world extreme skiing championships, which many things have come out of that, up to like even the Freeride World Tour today, and how a lot of what are called old school guys weren't on board necessarily. Like, I mean, Schmidt was there to judge for the first one, but he said it was kind of reluctantly. Like, I guess the question is how, and you do go into it in the book anyway, but it's like, how do you really feel? Not really feel, because that sounds like it's going to be a jerked off answer, but how do you really feel about the modern movement? How it's changed? Or do you feel, actually the question is, do you feel any of those kids disrespect you? Because I know you don't disrespect them. It's just different.
It's another world, it's in the book we talk about the parallels between how competitions change the face of sport.
Sure.
That's what happened to hot dogging. They introduced rules when how they got moguls all the way to the Olympics. I always say the Olympics are really, the sports in the Olympics are mutants to what they originally were.
Sure.
You and I had a pair of skates, and years ago I said, I'll race you around the lake, and then became speed skating. Right. So, So this happened to mogul skiing. It happens to all the sports. Once you start judging something, it's just not free anymore. And so, and in the 80s, and when they introduced the World Extreme Skiing Championships, it was an interesting time because you had a bunch of kids, Shane McConkey, of course, and Ken Kreitlin, all these guys on the bubble, waiting to break in from a different generation. And their way of doing that was to prove they were better than the old dogs.
Sure.
And we had it all to play for. We had the sponsors, we had the movie contracts, we had all that. So, I could throw down, and I was willing to throw down. But when they invited Plake and Schmidt to judge it, I'm like, well, if they throw down, I throw down. And, and what's cool about life is everything plays out, right?
Sure.
So Doug Coombs winning that was probably the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened to the ski industry, because you got the right guy in the right place doing the right thing. You got hybrid. You got a great skier, a nice guy, an adventurer, right? And he was our generation. So, that was kind of an amazing transition. And Doug being Doug, I think, eased in that transition. He did it on straight skis. It wasn't long after that the skis got wider and things start to change. So when kids ask me, of course, what was your big trick? My answer is staying alive. We skied in the snow. We were knee deep, waist deep, heading off those cliffs. Today they're up on the snow. So we couldn't think about spinning backwards or landing backwards. That was just something that wouldn't work. So it was a big change. But overall, I miss skiing. And, that's why I'm a huge fan of Marcus Kasten. He's making turning cool again. And I don't know why going straight is fun. I still don't get it. Like I just see people going straight, going by all the powder, going, you're missing it. You're missing it. And so as much as I give them cred for how fast they ski, how big they ski, the tricks they throw, it's lost on me straight
Yeah.
lining. I don't get it.
I don't really either. I also, in my travels and the people I talk to, see a longing for your day. Yeah, no disrespect intended to any generation. Oddly enough, me and a lot of the people I obviously hang out with, they're in between this new schooler generation of extreme guys, and I'm not. I stay in resorts. I'm not even that good of a skier. I just really like doing it, and I have a great time doing it. But there's also your generation, which was one before me. I got the one, and I'm in the middle. People are more longing for your time. So I kind of see that. Like, I don't get the straight lining either. Like, people I talk to are like, I mean, I have a few park kids that I hang out with. Okay. But, a lot of the guys who are still, are like, I want to be like Egan. I want to be like Deloria. I want to be like Schmidt or Plake. If I'm going to go big, that's my big, not big doing a triple backy with 540 thrown somewhere. Like, which is cool. Don't get me wrong, but not their thing. But talking about the generations and the difference, since you are a media guy and you worked in those films, we can all see the difference in the type, not just the type of skiers and snowboarders that are in them, but the difference in filmmaking. Do you see that difference as well as a professional?
Yeah, I mean, look, the films have changed a lot. The athletes have come full circle.
Sure.
They're fit, they're amazing. My nephews and their friends, whether they're chasing the Eastern Bump Circuit or skiing the big lines, they're outrageous. When I ski with that 20-something crowd, I'm in awe of how big and how fast they ski. And then in the middle of it, of course, they'll throw a double backy, and it's like, holy Hannah, right? So it's super impressive. And but on the filmmaking side, the reason why we're here, the reason why we wrote the book is stories. And I've wondered why the stories have dissolved out of the movies,
Yes.
And where's the art of storytelling? I it's nothing new. I've said it to TGR, Matchstick, all of them, Poor Boy. Look, you've got the best budget. You guys have the best athletes. You've got incredible technology and cameramen. Your edit's lazy. It's a lazy edit.
Sure.
Anybody can string together rushes. That's not talent. Like, tell me who these kids are, where they are, why they're doing it. Now, of course, that's some of my age. I want to know more. I'm curious about who these characters are. How did they get there? That sort of thing. But it's not what's popular, And if you draw that all the way back, it was Eric Perlman and the North Face Extreme Skiing films that we skied in, where the music video genre started with skiing. Prior to that, nobody was doing that. Warren wasn't doing it. Stump was doing it with great music, but Stump was a storyteller. Eric Perlman, 22 minutes, no narration for the first film, 45 minutes for the Extreme Skiing 2, no narration, little bit of narration, a couple of skiers' comments. It was about great, music, not even great music and action. And so from that, you saw, it grows. But, to me, the adventure of skiing, why is skiing generational? Why is it so, passed on? It's passed on because of stories. And I want the younger ones to know, and they want them to know. And then my grandfather taught me, and there it goes, right? So you go to Bolton Valley and it's generational. The Deloriers, you go to Sugarbush, there's generational ties at Sugarbush.
Man.
Generational ties with Boyne Mountain and Big Sky.
Totally.
And that's what skiing's about, right? So, we can't forget that. And those generational ties is what's moved the ski industry forward since the day it started.
Absolutely. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, 100%. I also agree about what you said. Where'd the storytelling go? And that's not just in ski film, that's in film as a whole. Like, that's something I do outside of this, is just study film. But it really has changed and it's almost become saturated. It's part of the problem with digital distribution. You know, some of the stories you talk about is how you secured distribution rights, what you did, get that stuff out there. The VHS boom, super important. That's a good story in here. Now anybody can put up an edit. Like I can put up a skiing edit tomorrow. I could make it tomorrow. There's not a single flake on the ground. I could still do it. I can make it look great. And like I said, I don't ski very well at all. I'm not good. I just like to do it. And I feel like there's now a saturation to it and I think that's part of what dissolved the storytelling. And now it's just, look, another guy doing a backflip. Look, another guy doing a front lip. Look, somebody just made a 1440 or whatever they're up to now. I don't know. That's like some of this stuff these kids do now was only in video games when I was little. I don't know how they're doing it. It shouldn't be possible. Sometimes I question whether or not Red Gerard is a real person. But yeah, and I agree with that. Everything you said about it, but I mean, it's still fun to watch. You know, I love the films from Eric Pollard and the Nimbus Independent crew. I love their stuff because it's about as close, I think, not to disrespect Level 1 or Matchstick or TGR, any of these other guys, but it's about as close to that storytelling feel, what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're doing it. I don't know.
It's a challenge everybody has today because of technology.
Yes.
There's so much technology. And so it's hard not to use the technology. It's hard not to color correct. It's hard not to make cooler graphics. And what's great about Matchstick is they bring a lot of theater into their openings, right? They really put a lot of effort into it, and it's very, very cool. And over the years, those have been amazing. What's amazing about TGR is just the amount of following they have and how important it is, and the names that come through there are legendary. And they're skiing legendary lines and doing legendary things. And they're letting the achievement stand for itself. So that's something, right? The fact that the line was skied, they showed the whole line, it stands for itself. We couldn't do that. We didn't have drones. We didn't have heli budgets. We were shooting cutaways. We were shooting the Warren Miller formula. So it was a totally, totally different thing. But if you look at storytelling and Cody Townsend, you see that, yes, that's still the magic sauce. What Cody's doing is telling a story, and he's telling it in a new way. He's telling it raw. He's telling it in an episode with no set time, short, long, drudgery, suffering, success. And you see the popularity that has come into Cody's and what he's doing. To me, he's a genius. Like he has taken everything that we're talked about and packaged it up for today. If you look at Chris Davenport has done the same thing. He's been able to weave a story into books and books about really famous places and things. So it's not dead, but the challenge is, how do you stand out? The kids that dress the same, jump the same, do the same tricks. If they're being judged, they have no choice. They have to do that. But if they're in the free skiing movement, what I say to them is, your challenge, my friend, is how are you going to stand out? Because you look a lot like the other guy, And, for John and I, it was the brother thing. We could ski really close together. We could mirror each other. We looked pretty close to the same. John's skiing is very unique, very, very special. I joke about it now, like I can mimic it for a little bit, but not constant, And so you just need it, right? Because one of the things we talk about in the books is extreme skiing wasn't a sport; it was entertainment.
Yeah.
So you have to understand what genre are you in? Are you in the sport or are you in entertainment? Once we figured out we're in entertainment, we started selling stuff.
Yeah, and very well, I might add, to read the book and go through how you all made that transition from just being guys who are out there to putting it on film and selling it. This could be almost an intro to business textbook. Like, it's very interesting for anybody who's been in, whether you're in media or even in retail, sales, whatever it would be. Like, there's something in here for you too, even if you don't ski every day. There's something in there for you, and it's a very interesting thing.
That's in Ski Bum. You know, the documentary we did on Warren Miller,
Yep.
you know, Johnny Mosley, he's talking about Warren and about how Warren traveled, you know, to 100 cities in the fall. And Johnny says in the movie, that's how you sell something, one at a time.
Yep.
You know, and that was sort of Warren's mantra. You know, Warren would always say, like, he'd call me up in the middle of my tour. He goes, "How's your tour going?" I'd be, you know, Warren had a bad night. You know, two people. He goes, "They buy you dinner?" I go, "Actually, yeah, one did." He goes, "You had a great night, dude." You know, and like, you know,
love it.
You know, so perspective is everything. You know.
Absolutely. Warren Miller, man, what a great guy. Like, such an interesting guy. That film was actually very interesting as well. If you haven't seen that, check that out. Great guy, very interesting. Warren Miller stories in here too. Not as many as you'd think. That kind of surprised me, because not in a bad way, just he was like the crown jewel of ski filmmaking forever. Like, pretty much. So you almost expect with this cast of characters, he was going to be the one that came up the most, aside from yourself and your brother, obviously. But he didn't. And I think that's actually really kind of interesting, because you did, like you said earlier in this interview, you spread it out. Everybody got their due. And even, you know, I think even you'd admit some people might have missed a little bit of their due. I think you said that in your acknowledgments. There's just so many people. If I missed anybody, I'll see you on the next one, man. But again, coming back to the book and what was in it, not just Warren Miller and talking about other stuff and stories we were talking about earlier, and I don't mean to wrap back around. I apologize for that. The emotion in it. There is sadness. There is turmoil. There is anger. I talk to you here to see you as an angry person. Being an angry person myself, I could never imagine it. And yet there's stories here where I thought this story was going to end with someone losing a tooth, which is fine. These things happen. But the one I was most interested was in fear and the perspective of fear. And not only did you talk about it, your brother talked about it, and there were 2 or 3 other people, as I can remember, who that were interviewed for the book that talked about that. I fear everything. I'm afraid of everything, and I just face it. I just walk out and deal with it when I can. I kind of feel that is the way that's what you were trying to get across. Just look in the eye, but fear is good. It's not a negative. It can be a positive, something a lot of people don't realize, I think. Is that accurate? Did I get that right? Or close?
You know, Schmidt, of course, talks about fear in the book. Kristen Ulmer, who's, you know, made a living talking about fear, the conversation with fear. You know, fear is natural and normal. And, you know, I think when you look at people who are high achievers, fear triggers something in them to heighten awareness. They're more apt to enter into the flow state if they come in nervous, if they come in knowing it has to be perfect. I think we saw that in the Olympics with say what you want, you know, with Biles. She knew that doing what she had to do, it had to be perfect. Otherwise, somebody's going to get hurt, probably her. So she stepped aside. So, you know, this idea that fear is sort of something you use as a trigger for excellence. You know, if I were going to jump off a cliff 12 stories high, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to use that to focus. And so there's rational and irrational fear. You know, and rational fear, jumping off a 12-story building, deserves a rational answer. Do it well. Irrational fear is, I'm jumping off a building. I freaked out. I got hurt. Like, that doesn't make sense. Why'd you jump? Right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah. So why do it?
If you weren't going to do it perfect, why'd you do it? And and so, of course, I mean, there's you know, a factor of risk in there, but that's the idea with fear. And I think what you see now, you know, you talked about it with the progression of tricks, pushing the limits. We're sort of bound by this idea of progression now. Something has to change, it has to evolve. And that's where we see a lot of injuries, is in the quote unquote progression in the new school extreme world. So that's something I think that needs to be looked at, not tempered, but studied.
I agree with that. Progression is a word you hear so much now, and not just in this sport, in almost anywhere, especially action sports as we call them, which are now Olympic sports in some times, skateboarding, surfing, all these other things. But yeah, the progression. I think I understand the want and the need to push. I don't always understand just because you can, should you? Like I asked the question, yeah, I sure you could push it, but then why? Is there a reason? And what is it and why? But I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe progression is the way. What do I know? I'm in my early 40s. I'm slowing down. Let the younger kids do what they want. I don't care. But fear, something big for me. When I got back out, this was my first season back on skis in 6 years, and my first day out was down at Big Snow, actually, down in New Jersey, the indoor place. And I got off the lift and I looked down. I was like, this place is cool and all, but I'm terrified. And this is a run 20 years ago I could have done blindfolded. Not that I would, but I could. Just terrified, but I did it and immediately was gone. So do it right. Don't do it. I don't know. Dan probably knows better because he's been around and done things I haven't done. So speaking of which, all the things you've done, I don't know if I'd ask you to pick a favorite because how could you? But if you could do it over and over again, say, which would you do? Would you go? I mean, you talk about how you spend winters, as the book's coming to a close, as the third act is closing, because this really does read in a 3-act format. It's amazing. I realized it near the end. I was like, holy smokes, is this real? But it's real. Near the end, you said you were, starting to, what's the word I'm looking for? Starting to simplify things, I think is an accurate word. So you were just going to France, but not Val d'Isère, but up to, or was that where you were going? Yeah, tell the story. You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, go fewer places and stay longer. And, and to, we were at the height of the Extreme Team Advanced Ski Clinics. We were doing 13 to 15 locations around the world. And really, Dean Dekas and I were carrying the bulk of that, and it was exhausting.
Sure.
And you would hire me to do a lot of things, but not logistics. And so going from France all the way to Alaska, to heli ski just didn't make a lot of sense, and I could never seem to coordinate it. So I was interviewing Glenn Plake for my podcast. About 2 to 3 years after his accident, where his tent mate died.
Sure.
And he told me, he got tired of going to Chamonix. He wanted to start coming from.
Okay.
And I thought, that was so profound and simple that I did that too. I wanted to stop going to Big Sky. I wanted to start coming from Big Sky. Yep. And my attitude about Europe was the same. So, if we all hold out this year, I'll be in Europe 6 times over 6 weeks and nice. Spend the rest of the time in beautiful Montana at Big Sky and pop in here to the east when need be. So, I think this idea, of course, with age, of course, hopefully comes some sort of learning or wisdom or perspective. And of course, we get a little more tired. But, the one thing, if you've been part of the skiing tribe, you realize that it's a worldwide community.
Sure.
And it's so nice to plug into that community. And particularly in Europe, because in Europe, the profession of a ski guide or a ski teacher is noble. It's been going on for centuries. Here, it's sort of slagged off, oh, you're a slacker, you're doing this. They don't see it as you're taking people on the adventure of their lifetime. So for me to touch base with Europe is to regenerate. It vitalizes me because I'm around my working peers in the profession that I've chosen for my entire adult life.
Which is awesome. And that's great. And it's awesome to hear that you're still going back out, which we know things getting out of your own country right now is still a pain in the backside. But clearing up slowly, not as quick as I'm sure some of us would like, but it's getting there. Interestingly enough, like you said, that's in Europe, the ski instructor is a pedestal profession there, not so much here. Maybe for a little while in the 80s, like the fictional films, I think tried to either put the instructor on a pedestal or like in Aspen Extreme, or made him a jerk off like in Ski Patrol, whatever. Do you see, and actually, you know what? I can expand this question for someone who has all the stories in the world, who's as famous, as you are, you know, I don't see you as arrogant. And that comes from the idea of, I knew a bunch of ski instructors in my day, and a lot of them held to that stereotype, that negative fictional film stereotype, the arrogant, I'm making 1,000 for a private. It's like, dude, I don't care what you're doing. Just, do you want your coffee or not? Like, whatever, but you aren't like that. Do you see people like that? Have any of your peers gotten like that? And then has it, cut ties because of it? I don't know.
Well, the one thing between the Johnny come latelys and the wannabes to the professionals, career professionals, is that we understand one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The mountain is bigger and stronger than we are.
Sure.
And so, when you've been into the throes of it, when you've lost your friends to avalanches, when you've lived it, humbling is something you need to survive.
Sure.
Cockiness, nature has a way of dealing with. And so, and that also comes from, how we were raised. John and I were raised too by our folks. And so, but I would say, of course there's, stereotypes and this sort of thing. And look, for some, being a ski instructor, making a living at it, it's quite an accomplishment. It's huge,
Sure.
If you're going to go through all the certifications, you have to achieve a lot.
Yeah, totally.
And, in this country, the Aspen, the Yellowstone Club, you make it there to teach, man, you've hit it. You're on top. You have the best clientele in the world.
Totally.
And trust me, there's plenty of cocky Europeans as well. So, but it's a mix, right? And I think at the core, but when you really talk to people who are traveling, who are living outside sort of the boundaries of the resort, there's more bond in surviving. There's more bond in, hey, what are you doing today for tomorrow, than there is what did you do yesterday. And
sure,
to me, that's really what it's about.
That's very interesting. It is interesting, and you see, again, that's something you see in the book. That's how these stories come off. It's not, dude, I'm Dan Egan. I could ski anything in the world, and my brother could ski anything in the world, and we were all the greatest in history. It's like, it doesn't come off like that. It's just like, we were here to do what we wanted to do, and this is what it became. Again, don't want to ruin anything, but it's a great set of stories. And like you said, you've bonded, you guys bond through this stuff, living and surviving. Yes, surviving some of this stuff. Not just on the mountain, but some of the hardship that came off. Are you still close with any of these guys? Schmidt, Blake? Do you just talk once in a while? Are you guys actually friends? Like, not every famous person knows every other famous person. But are you still, these guys 30 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bond between the, what I would say with the tribe, which is real. And we're happy, in Future Retro, last year's Warren Miller, they dusted off the old dogs, Tommy Day and Scott and John and myself, and they put us with, Jack and Marie Lovely, young rippers who and Costin, Parkin, who, I'm standing on top of the little at Big Sky, and I say to Parkin, hey, dude, do the math. I'm 3 times your age. I go first, and because I knew once he straight lined it, it was going to be over for me. And I was nervous. Oh, yeah. So, but are we all friends? Yeah. It's interesting. The guys, McConkey, Kreitler, that gang, Gaffney, that they all traveled as a herd. That generation saw themselves together.
Sure.
The boomers and the Xers we're lone wolves, and
Sure.
so we saw each other as competition. So we weren't filming together. We would film our segments, and the producer put them in the movie, but it wasn't like we were all traveling together. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the exception to that was the extreme team. You know, Eric Rob Delorier, Dean Deacus, Johnny, and myself, Adam Delorier, Matty Moo. You know, the whole gang. We were like a rock band. We were all best friends that had lived in vans, and we went to these resorts and we taught these clinics and we filmed them and all this sort of thing. But as we grew up and got families and lives and jobs, we were like the rock band that flew in alone, stayed
Mm-hmm.
in separate rooms, put on the best show on the planet, and then went our separate ways. Uh,
Totally.
and that's a factor of growing up, you know. So people's lives are busy. You know, it's hard to get on a chairlift with my brother.
Yeah.
He's a busy guy. You know, during the Hall of Fame induction, we got 2 chairlift rides together at Stowe, which was
Sure.
really my goal. You know, I wanted to sit on a lift with my brother again. I wanted
Yeah.
to ski with John. And you know, it's nearly impossible. We get off a lift and people show up and
Yep.
we want to talk and we want to ski. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
John's a little bit better at me than you know at that. He'll just go.
Yep.
You know, during our
Love
camps,
it.
I said, John, where's your group? He goes, dude, I wait at the top. I don't wait at the
Yep.
bottom. And
Yep. I love it. I love that.
you know, there's a bit of attitude. We love it. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It really is. It's I don't know if it was an intentional way you presented it, but it's a very intriguing, very tempting life. Like there's young kids I know, my friends' kids who are now in their mid-teens, late teens, early 20s. They would, if I gave this to them and said, read it. I don't care if you know who the guy is, just read it and know that it's all 100% fact. They would say at the end of it, that's what I want to do. Maybe not the business part of it, maybe not the end, but all the young person stuff, the vans, the impromptu, the basing where I'm going to be on the start of the baseball season. You know, they would love it. But would you suggest it to a young person to do it? Or would you give them some wisdom about it? Like, sure, you're young, go for it. But remember this. Would you do that?
Well, it's interesting. You know, if you look at the Olympics, you look at the X Games, the age is getting younger.
Yep.
If you look at Kai Peterson, youngest Red Bull athlete. So one, you have to think about the length of a career.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you have to think about how the development of people. And you know, we tell the story time and time again in the book. John made me go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
More than anybody else in my family, my parents and my other siblings, it was John that said, "Get your butt back to you know, school and finish college." And you know, in the end, I do think that was a difference maker.
Mm.
You know, being able to negotiate the rights to the films we skied in, being able to create a distribution company. You know, some people look at the careers and they think, "Oh, I'm going to be a skier," right?
Yeah.
No, somebody might. I would look and say, "No, you're an entertainer."
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, you know, like a musician, how are you managing your asset? What is your asset? What do you own? What are you giving away?
Sure.
What you know? So if you know these days, when you look at the followers and the likes, that's an asset, right?
Yep.
And that's something that has value and it's a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and if they manage that well and they know how to do that, then there's a career.
Yep.
But if you don't know how to do that, you might know how to create it, but not sustain it. Uh,
Sure.
we could go on and on and on about people that unfortunately didn't manage that well. So
Mm.
um, it's a you know my thing. You know, stay in school, kid. You know, my thing to parents is have an idea of what a realistic gold medal is. Is
Mm-hmm.
that a scholarship to school? Is that you know what's that look like? You know, is the U.S. team the goal, or do you want to ski in college and get a degree? Like, what's the
Sure.
goal? And the other thing that it's different that never existed when we were doing it is it's too late to get the sponsor after you've won. You
Yep.
need the foundation in place before the victory. You need the sponsors, the contracts, and everything, because that's the mechanism to make the money. If you
Yep.
go after it after you win, the sponsors are like, well, are you going to win again? Because it's really hard to win again. And, we see that time and time again. That's why Michaela Schifrin is so special, and just a piece on her, it's like the mainstream media still has not picked up on how special she is. Her track record in slalom skiing is the equivalent of Tom Brady throwing a touchdown every
God,
time he
yes.
touches the ball.
Yeah,
Not a
absolutely.
completion, not a first down, but a touchdown. Her
Yeah.
winning percentage in slalom is like almost 98%,
Yeah.
95 plus percent. And, we still want to talk about tennis players and all this other stuff and gymnasts. Forget it. Schifrin's the real deal. And she's a once in a lifetime, once in a generation.
Absolutely, she is.
I always have to say and put it in perspective, even for myself. Like, we had John and I, we were brothers. We loved each other. We traveled around the world, man. It was amazing,
Hey.
but it's about the people and the emotion you ignite in others, I think, that really counts.
Absolutely. And, it's awesome that you say it that way, because these are, I don't know these things like you do. You live the life, so your wisdom is legit. Mine is just thinking I know what I'm talking about. But I've known young kids in skiing and snowboarding who said, I'm going to make it. I'm like, well, are you going to make it? Obviously kids from New England can make it, no problem. But I've known kids in BMX. I've known kids in skateboarding, and they're great at what they do. But there is a piece missing. And I think it's all everything you just said. That's the part that's missing. To talk about Michaela Schifrin, who should be America's sweetheart for athletics, like the woman is nearly unbeatable. I've seen her ski in person at the World Cup in Killington. It's like nothing I've ever seen. I'm like, this kid, it's the true definition of the difference between know-how and talent. If someone asks me how she does it, I can kind of give you my insight, but she's just born to do it. But around the time her father died, she took the time off. She took off like the rest of the season and still came in second overall. She didn't race. Like, that's how much she already had won. She took the rest of it, came in second overall. She ended up accruing a lot of haters out there. Do you deal with that? How do you deal with that stuff for you? How do you think others should deal with it? Because there are people like, oh, her career's over. She sucks now. It's like, dude, I dare you to go challenge her. Like, what are you going to do? Like, she was dealing with stuff. Let her deal with her stuff so she can come back and whip everybody's tail again. So the hater stuff, how do you deal with that? Or do you even acknowledge it? Just give them the finger and send them on their way?
Well, with Schifrin, I mean, she's had such success at a young age. She's maturing.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to see moving forward is a mature Michaela and a young woman who's probably going to do it more on her own terms.
Sure.
And still, people won't beat her.
Yep.
In the media, of course, we want to say she's going to win so many medals in China this year and that sort of thing. And, it's hard to do. It's hard. Yeah. It was hard for Bodhi to do. It was hard for very few can do. And it takes a lot of things to go right. The haters, there's Dan Egan haters out there. There's no doubt. And those sort of things, it's like, look, man, this is my life and it's personal to me.
Sure.
I've worked hard to do it. And one thing that really sign of age is, it takes a while to toughen up to the internet, it's easy to poke fun. It's easy to say this, easy to say that. But to me, it's real. I battle every day to make it happen. If you're going to make a living on Solomon soup, you need to be creative and on your feet. And, living without a net is not easy. And I talk about that a lot. If you're going to go out on the high beam without a net, in Europe as a guide, we are our own rescue. There's nobody coming to get you. And that's how I see life. There's nobody like this is on me. So you want to take a shot at me, try and do what I do. Like, it's not easy. And,
Yeah.
I always joke with, clients or this and that. One day I'm going to retire and do what you do. And I just silently shake my head and go, I don't know if, like, what, because now you have money? Like
Yep.
it's not easy, mate. It's not easy.
Yeah, and it's not, and we know that. And again, you see that in the book, 30 Years in a White Haze. You tell that story too. Not so much so specific to the haters, but it's your life to do with as you choose. And sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes it's wicked easy, and sometimes it's too easy. And I've seen that in my own life. But it's a great book, man. Again, it goes through all the stories. And before I forget, because I keep forgetting and I keep noticing it's not in my notes, you're going to be touring Vermont with it, correct? Like, am I wrong about that?
Yeah,
I did.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So before I forget, because I want to make sure there's people showing up, like people who listen to me and watch me, I want to make sure they're showing up there because I have an autograph and they might want one too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that tour. What are you doing? When? If you have the dates, if you're not ready to give the dates, that's cool too. Just a overall overview, whatever it might be.
Yeah, well, on September 9th, I'm going to be a guest with the Ski Vermont Museum. That's
Cool.
Online. You can check it out. It's at 6:45 on the 9th. That's a Thursday night.
Okay.
On the 16th of September, I'm over in North Conway at the Birch Book store, and we're doing a big promotion there. And so that's going to be a great night. Of course, North Conway is a great ski town.
Oh, totally.
On the 18th, I'm over in Stowe at Bear Pond Books, which is awesome. We're going to try and shoehorn in the Vermont North Ski Shop somewhere in there. That's not been released.
Okay.
October 2nd, I'm in Middlebury doing a book signing over there in Middlebury. And then in mid to late September, I'm in Colorado. So I'll be in Evergreen. I'll be at the Copper Mountain Film Festival showing Ski Bum and signing books there.
Oh, wow.
I think we're somewhere in Frisco as well.
Nice.
Then, of course, later, if all goes well, we'll be over in London. The book's doing really well in London.
Nice.
A lot of Brits over the years. So we'll be up there at the National Snow Show. We're touring around Manchester and London with Ellis Brigham's, the big ski shop. November, I'm at the Denver Ski Show, Snowbound.
Nice.
Back into the east for the Country Ski and Sports Snow Show over Veterans Day in southern Boston, South Shore.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have the big Boston Ski Show, where really it all started for John and I the weekend before the holiday.
Nice.
And then over, World Cup weekend, you said it, I'll be there at Killington. We're doing an event there right on site at the base of the World Cup. You can come to the Alps and Meters booth and get a book and talk skiing.
Nice.
So then
that's awesome.
Eventually I'm going to start skiing and head over to Zermatt right after that.
Nice. So that's a big tour. That's like huge, which means I need to get this out this week, which is fine. I've told people it was going to be out later in September. No, this will be out tomorrow, guaranteed. But that's awesome. So fanboys and fangirls want to see Dan Egan, want to meet him. Look ahead of time, though, because every venue, I'm sure, has something a little different with its COVID protection. I don't know, like, for a while, I know there were some live events that weren't allowing pictures, things like this, things to prepare for. So I don't know, and I don't know if you know offhand what they are or if they're going to matter. Like, I don't know. So check first. Like me, I'm going to check first because I think what I'm going to do, if there's pictures available, I'm going to go fanboy it up, get a picture with Dan on one day, and then during the World Cup, I'm going to get that signed to go with this and just be a disgusting fanboy nerd, friggin' whatever. But be safe about it. That's a huge tour. Like when I was contacted about doing this interview, Sammy just said Vermont. So I was like, all right, cool. I didn't realize it was going to be all over the place, including the snow show down in Boston, which I went to the year before the pandemic, which is awesome. Good fun. I had never been before. and it's great. Snowbound running it now, and I guess it is going to be live and in person this year then, huh?
They're still going for it. And of course, people don't
Cool.
realize Boston Ski Show is one of the biggest shows in the country.
Oh, yeah.
40,000 people plus. And, it's a great event. And, that really shows itself as a New England event.
Yeah.
People still love trail maps. They still love stickers. They still want to talk face to face to the resorts and the manufacturers. And they want to hear the stories. What I love about all that is you see families and you see the wide eyes. We're going to go to Sugarloaf this year. We're going to go to, up to Jay Peak, and the enthusiasm for these places. That's really
Absolutely.
what's very, very cool about it. And, it all comes to life at the Boston Ski Show. Back in the day when Bernie Weitzel gave us our own theater, we'd have a curtained off area and would be up there telling our stories and selling our Dayglow t-shirts and videos. Awesome. And it was just so fun. And, that down home feel of it all is what I love.
Absolutely, dude. I agree. I got down there on a whim, actually. I wasn't going to go. I hadn't gone. And I got contacted by one of the people who was had a setup there, a display, her turn at the she shed coming out of Sunday River and Boston. And she said, "Oh, you want to come down?" I was like, all right, to heck with it. I'll come down. It's a bus ride. No worries, because let's be honest. I know you're a Boston guy, so maybe you can have some insight on this. The traffic, even after they built those tunnels, it's not the worst in the country, but take the bus in. Trust me, it's easier. But to that story of taking the bus in, I did get turned around and lost walking over to the show from South Street Station. And the community-driven part of it, the skiers, the popularity of it, I happened to just look around. I was about to ask someone for directions. I saw some kid with a Black Crowes backpack, the ski manufacturer, not the band. I was like, I know where he's going. And you get there, and it's just people who love it, people who are doing it. Like you said, everybody's in it for the story. It's very personable. Like you walking around there, it almost feels like an Opry parking lot here in New England. There's people standing around, plastic beer cup, and talking. I met Jumping Steve Long from Peace and Pow there. I talked to someone from Jay Peak there, and we were just rapping about a storm that happened like 2 days prior. Wonderful event. And if they're doing it live, and Dan Egan's going to be there, so it's more than worth it to go. Check it out, man. It's awesome. And Boston's an awesome city anyway. I love that city. So definitely check that out. And
it's at the Prudential Center this year. So it's at the Heinz Auditorium. So a little more central right there in Copley. It's going to be a little more intimate. It's a smaller venue. And what the Snowbound team's doing is they're bringing music. They're making a real festival. So it's probably a sort of thing where you want to go every day. It's going to be that sort of thing.
It really does. I mean, I had a blast, and I only went for one of the 3 days, and I was like, man, it would be worth it just to get a hotel room down here and just walk over every day. Awesome show, good time, a lot of fun. Definitely something worth it. And, it is also mountains selling their wares. So it's every mountain in the Northeast, several from out West, a few from Europe were there the year I was there. I couldn't believe that. I think even one of the Aussie mountains showed up. Sure. One of the ones on the Epic Pass, probably, probably Vail just drag everybody up, which is fine. Do what you got to do. Great fun. Awesome time. And all these other events again, where are the events on your website, on a different website?
Yeah, they can. You can either go to white-haze.com or dan-egan.com. All the book signing tours, dates, and everything's right there on the web. And of course, Facebook. 30 Years in a White Haze on Facebook. It'll all be posted there. There's Eventbrite. So we're pretty on it there. So yeah, definitely check it out online at Facebook for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, be safe. Check everybody's specifics, because one place might require masks, one place might not. One place might, Dan might be allowing pictures close up at one place and 6 feet at another. So check and make sure. Don't mess around. There is something, speaking of locals here, I got a message right before you called. Right before, someone has said, because I put it out there on my social media, like, Dan Egan, anybody want to ask him a question? Here's your chance. I did get one hook. I hooked one person, which is awesome. This was Brian Burr. He sent this over on Instagram. He's actually the fire chief down there in Claremont. So if you know Claremont at all, where that is, it's right up the road from me. I'm up in White River Junction, so I'm near there. He said, if you could point out one thing in your life as a professional that could convey your life or what it is to be a professional to some young aspiring kid, what would it be? Like the advice, the story, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, just be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
There you go.
Um, that's the sign of a pro. It's not based on your emotions. It's not based on how many people are there for you. If I tell somebody I'm going to be there, I'll be there. And, rain, shine, whatever it is. So I think the follow through on that one simple thing is so important. Like the old adage, showing up is 50% of the game,
Yeah, man.
and, don't believe what's in your head. It's never as good or as bad as you think. So, just show up, boot up, and see how it goes. That's where the magic is. And, these book signings, we have all different amounts of people come. Some 10 people stroll in, some we have 40, 50 people stroll in, but every person matters to me. So I don't
Nice.
just enjoy the smaller ones because I have more time with them. And if somebody makes the effort to come out to see me and meet me and buy the book, they didn't do it online, they did it in person. That means something to me. I appreciate that. And so I think just that sort of attitude about caring about everybody that comes out, Peyton Manning recently got into the Hall of Fame, the
Sure.
Football Hall of Fame, and he's talked in his speech about how right after his career he wrote thank you notes to everybody, and I was like, wow, that's amazing, to take the time
Yeah.
to be that successful, that wealthy, and I just had lunch with my high school soccer coach.
Nice.
Like I appreciate people and take the time to appreciate people.
Absolutely. I love that. I try to do that, and I'm a little media guy. I'm a little guy, but I love the people who love what I do.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks, some confirmation I could do. But, just the book itself, Brian, to add on to what Dan said, just put it in a kid's hand. It's inspiring on every level. If you want to be a pro skier, if you just want to be an athlete, Dan talks about not just skiing in this book. He was a soccer player and a decent one. Sailor and a decent one, knows what he's talking about, a true athlete. Are you doing that this summer? Are you out on a boat this summer, or are you just hanging out in New England?
It's all on Lightning Fleet 332 on Squam Lake, the season championships coming down to this Sunday. So
Nice.
the finale on Labor Day, we've got 4 boats all vying for the season championship. And,
Nice.
I love that. As much as skiing is important to me, sailing connects me to my youth in a completely different way. The hit memories of my dad and I sailing and my oldest brother, Bobby. And, that brings me back. I love this thing about doing sports, that doing them as an adult, doing your youth sports as an adult, not as a child,
Sure.
with an adult perspective. So it's fun to want to win, and it's okay when you don't now. So
That's awesome. See, that's more the brilliance of the book, and I know it may seem like I'm overhyping it. I don't mean to sound like I'm overhyping it. I just really enjoyed it. And the different aspects, because you get into a story, there's a ski story, then the next chapter is a sailing story, and you don't forget who Dan Egan is, but it's like he has a real life, like he's a real person with a real life. Because there's so many, and again, to go back to the question of arrogance that I said, and it also runs with tryhards and posers or whatever term you want to use. Some people convey skiing, that's it, that's my life. If it is, great, but not all of those guys really are that. But they do tend to look down upon some of us other guys who are like, nah, dude, in the summer, I'm playing basketball, I'm throwing a frisbee, I'm writing, I'm an auto mechanic. I'm skiing is what I love. It's what I do, but there's more to me than that. And there's more to you. That's part of the brilliance of this book, I think. Yeah. And you did a great job conveying that. And I think that is a very important thing to, it's very important for people to read. Speaking of which, the book brings us to now. And like we said, we're still on the water, still on the mountain. we're at 30 years. Are you going to go for 40? Is there going to be a sequel in 10 years, or is there going to be a sequel in another 30 years when you're over 100 and, writing doing things that no other 100-year-old did? What do you think?
Well, there's the 30 years in a white haze ties back to the Mount Elbrus expedition where I was lost for 38 hours and over 50
Totally.
people died. And I'd always never, the problem I'd always had with survival stories is the accident usually came at the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was the beginning of my story. So I wanted to tell it from a perspective of 30 years ago and how that shaped my life. The next project Eric and I are working on, it's called Dying to Ski. And
Okay.
It's about all the loss of the big mountain generation. It starts with Paul Ruff, and it follows all the deaths from Coombs to McConkey to Trevor Peterson, and on and on and on.
Wow.
So we've got 30 pros that were chronicling their lives and their loss told through their loved ones. And it brings up what we were talking about earlier in the podcast, the notion that sport was designed to enhance our life, not end it.
True.
And so the project really takes a look at progression. Was it worth it? Is dying doing what you love a good death?
Yeah.
And people struggle with that question. I had one wife, a widow, gave me the best answer to that question you could ever imagine. No, he loved me more. And,
okay.
And I love that, and ever since I've heard that, I tell my loved ones, if something happens to me over in Europe, just know that I was at work. I didn't die doing what I loved. I love you more, and I died at work. And, we don't take the time to put that into perspective. And all of these things that we've been talking about, younger athletes and careers and progression, are all going to come together in Dying to Ski. We're going to take a look at post-traumatic syndrome. We're going to take a look at sort of the Red Bull generation.
Okay.
And so what you see, we ended the book and we mentioned Paul Ruff and his tragic death in Kirkwood when he tried to jump 135 feet. And we did that as a launching place for Dying to Ski, because when Paul passed, there was this much written about it in Ski Magazine. I mean, barely got a note.
Totally.
And if you magnify that to the Glenn Plake accident in Nepal, when the avalanche took out his tent and his tent mate was never found, that was on CNN. So how do you go from 135-foot drop to somebody loses their lives, were barely mentioned, to CNN? Well, that's the birth of an industry. And what you see is from 1989 really up until today, you see the rate of death increasing. So, and with the rate of death increasing, you're seeing the media coverage increasing.
Sure.
So it's an important project. We're excited about it. We've got a big team on it, actually. So that will be our sequel to 30 Years in a White Haze, is telling other people's stories, the importance of those stories and the decisions they made.
Awesome. That sounds like a great project. Very interesting. A lot of stories there. Again, you're right. It was at a certain time period you didn't hear about it. Now you do. Almost kind of like a great memorial to those guys too, guys and gals who didn't make it. It's very sad. I know a lot of people try to get kind of cold-hearted about it because well, it's what they do. I'm like, yeah, but nobody goes out. Nobody thinks. I guess at a professional level, and I guess you could speak to this because I have talked to other big mountain people who say, I know I could die on any given day. But you don't want necessarily. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this. There's a video that came out through TGR with me called Flow. And, the beauty of youth is not knowing, right?
Sure.
You're not aware of what the consequence actually would be. And of course, there's a lot of research that shows us that our frontal lobe doesn't recognize that either until we're older. So, although it's true, the risk is there, and I did it, and I've seen others do it. We talk about risk management and all this sort of nonsense.
Sure.
It's a blink of an eye, the wrong thing. And
Sure.
so, the idea is how many times you're going to do it. What's
Yeah.
what's the rate that you're willing to do it, and what's important about that. And I think that there's so many examples that we can learn from, whether it's Shane or others. My favorite line in the McConkie movie is his good friend Scott Gaffney saying, "Shane would be really pissed off to know he died."
Yep.
And
I remember that. That was a great line.
Beautiful line, and it's a very insightful line, and it's a truth. So, we miss these people. We would be remiss not to learn from that, and not to have others be aware of that. I think there's a responsibility for those of us who have survived, to put that into some sort of perspective. And yeah, I think it's important.
That is great. And that was a great guy with Gaffney, because you do chuckle at it because it seems kind of chuckleable, and Shane was a clown.
Yeah.
So you could chuckle at things like that a little bit, as long as it's not disrespectful. But to see a project like that coming out in regards to respect of these folks, that's interesting and unique. I don't think that's been done before, right? Like, you're the first.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's super important about that is that in Snow and Rock magazine, climbing magazines, there's always been an obituary. So but in the ski world, we've never had an obituary in Powder magazine, ski magazine, ski magazine. So there was something that we sort of never really spoke about. It happened, and then as we got into hero worship, the only way to make the cover of the magazine was to pass on. It's like, why aren't they writing about the living? Why are they just talking about the ones that messed up? There's a transition there, and it's really an industry maturing and an industry trying to deal with the risks that we've created through the hype and the media, and the sponsors. So it's a big discussion. We're not saying skiing's risky. We're not saying don't do these things. We're saying let's take a look at it, and what can we learn from it. But more importantly, as you say, how do we memorialize these lives? So we're going to have a living memorial online as a sort of portal.
That's cool.
Where people can find about the different foundations and their names, and really put some, some teeth to it, so it helps out the legacy of these skiers that we all loved.
That's awesome. When can we expect that, do you think?
Well, we're on it now. I've just re-released my first book, All Terrain Skiing. So All Terrain Skiing Volume 2 will be out this fall. Mastering the Skiing Mind, which will be another instructional book, will probably hit early winter. And so Dying to Ski, we're going to take our time with it, but my guess is 23, 24.
Cool. Very good. So all kinds of stuff to look forward to from Dan Egan. You could have your reading list full for the next 3 years. Awesome, dude. I love it. And a good place to start. Like you said, there's been books prior to this. This is now one of my favorites that I've ever read ever. And I'm like a science fiction junkie, so I've read a lot of that stuff. But if you like an adventure story, 30 Years in a White Haze. You like a biography, 30 Years in a White Haze. You need a business manual, 30 Years in a White Haze. You need a history book. In this, he talks about Boston prior to him, his grandparents. Awesome. It's just a great book all around. Pick it up. Available everywhere you could get books, or just Amazon, or everywhere. Check your local bookstore. Everywhere. Cool.
Everywhere. So Barnes and Nobles, anywhere. Support your local bookstore, of course. It's on the shelves. It's in ski shops.
There you go.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Excellent. That's so awesome. Yeah, man. Thanks, Dan. This was awesome. This was a great talk, man. I'm sitting here just listening. Like, I just want to listen. I could listen all day. And like I said, I've read it, and I didn't want to get too specific on some things because, as you said, the Mount Elbrus story is kind of like the key. And you kind of, again, I don't think it ruins it to say it leads to that, and then it leads away from that. It's, again, the three act narrative. It's truly, again, you wouldn't have to you pull out those first 5 pages that explain why it was written in the third person. You get rid of that and just hand it to somebody, they'll just read it as a story and then say, by the way, that's all legit. It's an adventure story, but the man's an adventurous man, it would so seem. Thank you, Dan. I can't plug it enough. I think it's awesome. Like he said, there's stuff coming out over the next couple of years. There's all the dates. Check the dates again. The few in Vermont, 18th, October 2nd. I'm going to be at least one of them. The race over at Killington, which is in person this year. Again, be safe. I don't know yet what the requirements are going to be. I don't think anybody does. Well, they know, but I don't know if they've put it out there yet because we still have to wait till November. But it should be a big year for ladies GS and slalom. It should be a lot of fun. And it is fun. If you've never done it, Dan, you've been to these events. I've been to this one. It's a lot of fun to see ski racing in person. It's a lot different than watching it on TV, but every sport is like that.
Well, one thing about the World Cup in Killington is that you get to see the most gates. One is free. And two, I've been to Olympics. I've been to World Championships. I've been to the World Cup. You're seeing 3/4 of the course on Superstar. That's a rare experience. It's one of the best venues to view a race. And of course, Michaela Schifrin's there. It's historic. And to watch her shift gears and to throw it down on that final run. And you want to see the last 15 of the slalom and the last 15 of the GS, because every run gets better. Every run gets faster. And it's a jaw drop. You can't believe it. She was faster than that. The next one's faster than that. You're like, and it's just building to this crescendo where you're like, that was unbelievable. And you said it, and I've said it. If you want to see skiing in a perfect form, go to Killington, because you just cannot believe those last 15 of both days. You're like, my goodness, that is powerful. That is skiing. They're just throwing it down. It's an icy slope. It's a challenging slope. It's got rolls in it. The girls love it. It's definitely by far one of the best sporting events I've ever been to.
Yeah, it is great. Like I've seen pro basketball. I've seen a few other things. I've seen collegiate basketball. I've seen some other things, man. But for true excitement, just to be there and just watch them zip by, and you got to think they're not doing like 5 miles an hour, kids. They're hauling ass, pardon my language. Like, it is something to watch, and to watch the skill and the talent. Like I said, I've seen Schifrin ski in person now, and it's perfect. It is perfect. It's awesome. So be there for the race. Be there for Dan. Be there for me too. I'll say hi to you too. It's fine. But thank you, Dan. This was awesome. Have a good time out there. He's still in New England. He's still a New Englander. I'm not going to tell you where, though. None of you weirdos go out there. That's not cool. Thank you again, man, my fellow New Englander. This was awesome. The book is awesome. I can't wait to these events. Like I said, I'm going to be in at least one, and I'm definitely going to be at the race this year, provided there's enough room for everybody. It was awesome, dude. Thank you. I am so appreciative that you did this for me.
Thanks so much, Tim. A lot of luck, and I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And there you go, everybody. The interview with the great and very friendly and personable Dan Egan. 30 Years in a White Haze, great book. And as we said in the interview, there's more projects coming from him. The man is nonstop. He's a good guy. Thank you for listening or watching, hashtag watching. If you do both, I really do appreciate it. Again, follow, subscribe, rate, share with your friends. Also be on the lookout. I was looking for volunteers for a live stream for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving for you Americans. Thanksgiving is the last Thursday in November. On Wednesday night, I want to do a live stream and talk about, the industry. And working in the industry on the holidays. It's going to be a Thanksgiving holiday / holiday special if I can get the volunteers and if people want to do it and if people want to see it. That'll be coming obviously at the end of November. And I'll be doing that, and that'll be the last thing I do for that weekend, because that's also race weekend over at Killington. Dan Egan and I will both be up at Killington for that race. So check that out. Say hello. I'll probably try and wear gear centered around it, so it's Tim from Ski Rex Media, but that's not always easy, because last year I needed all my actual ski gear because it was cold and I don't have in the merch shop yet actual ski jackets and ski pants that are Ski Rex Media branded. So keep an eye out. I'll let you know. I'll be posting from the race all day. I have been to GS Day both time I've gone, not Slalom Day, but I will eventually. This year, I'm hoping to do GS and Slalom Day. It's only 35 miles from me. It's not that big of a deal. In any case, thank you once again to Dan Egan. Again, check out his websites. He gave you all a list. I'll also put them in the description. Where you can find the dates and for each of the events where you can get a book signed. You can buy a book, get a book signed, meet Dan, talk skiing, talk shop, talk industry, whatever it is. Check that out, and then be very specific to see what their COVID regulations are. Some may require masks, some may not. Dan might be able to take pictures, he may not. It'll all, you'll be able to find all that information and know before you go. That way it's easier on you, it's easier on them, it's just easier on everybody. Right. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I will not say who's going to be on next week because I obviously don't know how to schedule very well. So next week, join me on the podcast. There may be another interview or there may only be a commentary video. Plus, there's going to be behind the paywall Patreon commentary videos coming. Just specific things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to put it up for the Patreon fans, and you'll be able to check that out, which is also getting redesigned as well. Right. All right. I think I've talked enough. Now that the show is over for the day. So I will see you on the next one. Have a good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon. Whenever you're listening or watching this, I will see you on the next one, and I'll see you out there this winter. I'll be at Indy Pass Mountains and at Whaleback. So there you go. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. I hope you enjoyed it. Laters.